Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where it's about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Superman and Lois. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Obviously, picking up immediately where the previous episode left off, we had Tag attacking Jordan because he knows on some level that Jordan's involved. He just doesn't know. He just wants answers because he blames Jordan for what's happened to him. I mean, much like Jordan, that's the interesting parallel I think they're going for there. Where like Jordan's entire life is turned upside down when it turns out he's has powers, and now Tag has him out of nowhere, and it's like, I got sent to the DOD, and we don't know the full extent of everything that was going on down there, and I guess even Clark doesn't, but I guess he was probably locked away and kind of treated like a freak and stuff like that, and they were probably pushed and prodded to kind of understand what he's treated more like a criminal than probably like the teenager that he's, this scared kid who doesn't know what's happening to him. And he just wanted answers because he needed someone to blame for like what had happened to him. He believes Jordan's responsible, and he's just like, just give me the answers. Luckily, Clark shows up in time because Jordan contacted him. But in the process, Tag almost derailed the train in the process, which I love the slow-mo, grabbing the train, heat visioning the tracks so that like they stay in a position that the train could just like roll back onto the tracks. So obviously it's a situation of like, you know, Jordan starts, I'm curious, like maybe his contact with Tag or something, like it triggered something, because that's when he starts getting a high-pitched hearing. So it's like his super hearing starts kicking in. It had never come up before. Prior to now, he had his super human strength as well as like his heat vision, but now like he's slowly developing other abilities as well. So what that necessarily entails, who fully knows. Obviously, with Tag being out there, Sam saying that, like, obviously he's going to keep an eye out and everything, but Clark wants Jordan to kind of, like, sit this out, but obviously for Jordan, it's like, no, this is too important of a game. We're going up against Metropolis, obviously the school that they used to go to, so it's like, this is important for both of them. For Jonathan, it's a chance to show up his old teammates. It's like, yeah, like, you know, it's like to prove himself in his own right. And so, same thing for Jordan, because for Jordan, it's like, these are the people who bullied me, made my life hell. I need this as an opportunity to make them, you know, pay them back, which obviously it's just, you know, he's a teenager, and it's like, oh, I want to show these guys, like, you know, great power comes great responsibility, but for him, it's like, no, I'm going to make a point. I'm going to make them see me for, like, I want to pay them back. He wanted to make them hurt because of all that they put him through. So he's telling his dad is okay, and obviously I love the moment, like, the kind of training montage him and Jordan and Jonathan have, where it's like, okay, so here's his log. Or what, we don't know what it doesn't. I don't know if that was just wood or whether that was what that was. It looked like it was just a log, but I guess it's like thick wood or whatever. So it's like, all right, punch it. And now Jordan does, and just kind of hurts himself, and is like, ow, thanks. And he's like, all right, sorry. I was hoping just like, you know, instincts would kind of kick in, but all right, plant your foot, focus. And obviously, Jonathan's giving him motivation. He's like, oh, pretend it's Cutter's face, and he does it, and it's like, yeah, I like that moment. Just like, yeah, oh my god, that was sick, Jordan. And just like, you're celebrating as a family. It's pretty dope. It's like, all right, well, keep at it. You know, it's pretty dope. Obviously, for Jordan, his powers are going haywire because the moment like he hears the high, like because his powers are kicking in, like. Because, you know, his dad obviously went through a very similar thing when it came to, like, learning to control each and every one of his abilities. I don't know, like, we don't know the time frame, because, like, even Smallville, like, the show, it was a while as we, like, slowly pieced through, like, a lot of, like, Clark's abilities and what he's fully capable of. But, you know, who knows if this time frame is accelerated for him or not, Jordan, whether maybe his encounter with Tag, like Tag's powers, maybe it jump-started something in his Kryptonian DNA with every blow. Who knows, or maybe there's something deeper than that. We'll have to wait and see, but obviously at school, he's still, like, his heat vision's kicking in because the sound is overwhelming and it's kind of triggering his other powers, because Jonathan has to be there to kind of like breathe, and I do like that like much like Martha and Jonathan were there for Clark in that regard. Like, I do like that Jonathan's there for Jordan in that regard. But breathe, calm down, it's good, you know. So they ultimately end up preparing for the game. Obviously, he wanted Sarah to be there just because it's like, because Jonathan's like, oh, so that's why you really why this game is so important to you in that regard as well. Because, you know, it's like, yeah, him and Sarah kind of solidified, like, oh, we're just going to be friends. But, you know, obviously, that's complicated in its own right. But at the same time, at the football game, Jordan's kind of getting distracted because his powers and everything, and their QB ends up getting hurt. So Jonathan steps up and does his thing while Jordan does as well, but Clark has to be like, yo, like, keep it in line or you're getting benched, so focus, you know. And then later on, the other team, like, all dog piles on them, you know, and obviously Jordan, like, gets so overwhelmed that his dad's like, go ahead and let it out, and, like, he heat visions into Clark's hands and stuff like that. And I think that speaks volumes, too, about, like, just, like, probably how powerful Jordan is. That, I mean, like, even despite being the man, is still, like, even he's kind of, like, the heat vision, I guess it was kind of quite, he was able to kind of hold it back, but it's still like, it's all like raw power coming out like that. So I thought that was kind of interesting. He'd even talked to Jordan about like, yeah, like, you heal faster because you're Kryptonian side, but you're still going to get hurt. Like, you know, it's not like you're completely impervious to pain or something like that, you know? So, but obviously for Clark, he wants answers. Like, okay, like, you know, were there any signs? And Jonathan's like, actually, Dad, there were. Jordan just kind of hit it. But for Jordan, it's like, this is important to him because for him, it's like he spends so much of his life feeling like he wasn't good at anything. He's got his own situation to deal with, and it just made him feel like such an outsider, like he didn't belong, and now he's found a place to belong. And I thought it was really interesting the lines he says later on when he's basically talking about how he feels like his powers, like he was kind of, he's like, I was naive enough to think they bring me closer to people, when in actuality it just pushes me further away, which we'll kind of get to that later. But I thought that was such an interesting line of dialogue, especially like because his dad trying to tell him it's a responsibility with these powers and stuff like that. But for Jordan, it's like, but I'm not you, Dad, you know. So, but at the same time, there's the whole tag thing. Like him showing up at Sarah's place, I was wondering, like, why? Because obviously he was stalking Sarah a little bit. But I was like, why is he at her? But it's like, for him, it's like, we were always friends, and I felt like I can turn to you when I couldn't turn to anyone else. So he ends up kind of accidentally kidnapping her because he wants, he thinks that he can rely on her, that maybe she can help him. It's like, he's trying to throw out his theories about Jordan and everything. Luckily, Clark shows up at the same time to DOD. Like, obviously, Sam's handling this with an iron fist because, for one, it's like, oh, he escaped me once. I underestimated him. We're not going to let that happen again. He's a monster. It's like, he's not a monster. He's a kid with powers. And so in that, you know, the way they're going about this is super aggressive. I guess also, like, he came after my grandson and everything. And it's like, yeah, but still, you shouldn't be handling this with such a forceful approach. Once again, Sam's super hard-headed. Like, he's coming at it from the perspective of, this is a perceived threat, I'm gonna stop it. You know, not only on a professional level of, this is a perceived threat to endanger many people, my grandchild as well, you know, one of my grandchildren in particular. But when the time came, Clark steps in, he's trying to talk to Tag, calm him down and everything. We don't, because obviously, like, he vibrates, and that, I guess it's almost like similar to how, like, when Barry, like, vibrates his molecular, like, his molecules are able to move in a way he can kind of phase. I guess Tag kind of uses that more so as, like, a speed thing, which is interesting. I don't fully understand, like, how his powers work. I wasn't expecting that, to, like, him vibrating like that. I guess it should have been a sign of, like, that was going to be a speed thing. Because, I mean, that's how, like, they do the whole, like, they vibrate their body so fast they're able to phase through stuff. Like, that's how that works for them. So I guess that should have been a key sign, but like it's just, I guess, like him vibrating like that is just like because it vibrates in a way, because he even burns through shoes, which is just kind of an interesting detail, because he has all those sneakers that, like, you know, Sarah's looking at and they're all kind of burned through. But the DOD shows up, and obviously Clark is telling them not to do this, but they open fire, and we see some kryptonite bullets amongst it. It's like, yo! So I'm assuming Clark didn't know about, because he doesn't confront Sam about, like, he confronts him later on about you using kryptonite bullets, but he didn't say anything about, oh, so you have them. So it's like, well, because it's interesting. Once again, it also depends on the continuity. Like, Clark got rid of a lot of the kryptonite on Earth back in Supergirl. So if this is, I'm still under the impression this takes place on the same Earth, that we haven't gone multiverse yet, that this is on a different Earth. They still kind of keep that a little ambiguous. But that's also another thing, too. It's like, right, my cousin. It's not just me you can hurt with that kryptonite. You are also trying to hurt Tag. But also, like, it can hurt my cousin too, and we're doing nothing but trying to help. But I thought that was such a powerful moment where, like, the kryptonite hits him and you could tell Clark's getting mad, like heat vision activate. And I love, like, we're kind of cutting back and forth between that and Jordan's situation, which we'll get to later. But I love that moment, just like, oh, he's getting pissed. And he's looking at them. I was like, yo. And he just grabs the kryptonite, throws it, and he burns it. And he rushes over them, eyes blazing red. Stand down. It's like, ooh, that was scary seeing Clark like that. And in that moment, you can tell they're like, almost terrified, because like, oh, we weren't trying to hurt you, Superman. We were just trying to stop him. We didn't. But that's what pisses Clark off, because, you know, the way Sam approached it, because it's like, he's not treating Tag as like some kid with powers. You're treating him like he's some monster or something. It's like, your grandson has powers. Like, if the opportunity came, would you have done the same thing? But for him, it's like, I'm trying to protect, like, American lives. Like, that's what I'm doing. And it's like, I'm willing to do it by any means necessary. He's like, yeah, I know that now. He's like, I wish I had your trust in people, you know. And Clark's like, I wish you did too. Like, he's so pessimistic that he won't give people the benefit of the doubt. And obviously he knows he upset Clark by using kryptonite. It's like, not only were you going to use that against Tag, that means you've got a supply. The thing you know can hurt me. We're literally family. I'm your son-in-law, and you got a weapon that can hurt me, because there's somewhere in your mind, like, it didn't get to that, but somewhere in his mind, he still perceives Clark as a threat that you could always turn against the world at any point in time. Got to be ready. Yes, there's a world that Lex comes from. But I thought this episode also does a fantastic job encapsulating, like, what they kind of have to do of, like, right, you can't get angry. Like, you aren't like other people. You get angry, people could die. And, like, Clark has that conversation with Jordan, because Jordan, like, you know, him and Jonathan are hanging out with the boys, celebrating and stuff. Their old school comes and start, like, the dude in particular, Cutter, starts shit with Jordan. And Jordan ends up, like, you know, kind of getting pissed, and Jonathan tells him just to calm down. But in that moment, he punches. They didn't focus on this too much, but in that instant, Jonathan stopped his punch. If that was the case, like, I would have expected a lot worse. Also says a lot that if Jordan had hit Cutter, that would have been bad, because that was like a super punch, you know? But in that moment, like, it didn't seem like it was just Jordan stopping. Maybe it was. Maybe he was fat. His reaction time was just that fast. But it seemed more so like Jonathan actually stopped his fist, because you see like almost like a sonic boom. But maybe that's supposed to be representation of, like, because he even says it later on. He's like, I heard the bones inside of Jordan's arm break, you know? And now it's like obviously for him, it's like, I didn't mean to hurt you, Jordan. And he's like, yeah, it doesn't matter if you didn't mean to. You still have these powers, and you did. And I was the idiot that tried to stop you. So thanks. Now that my arm is broken, I may never get full mobility back. And I may like football isn't just important to you. It's important to me too. And you took that away from me, bro. Especially because all he's done is support and be there for Jordan. Yeah, there's been some hiccups along the way, but he's always tried to be supportive of Jordan. And it's like, it's like, oh, it didn't work both ways. And so Clark has to call him out and be like, you have a responsibility. He's like, I get those feelings too. And Jordan was like, and I think in that moment it made Jordan go, wait, you do? Because he thought like, oh, his dad's like had these years of everything, that everything's in control. But that instant show you like, Clark is just like any person. He can get angry. But for him, it's like, I'm held to a higher standard because I'm Superman. Like, the fact of the matter is, when I first became Superman, people didn't trust me. Like, the fact is that people, you know, were scared of me. I'm this being of immense power, and they're worried that I could go against them. So he's like, for the past 20 years, what have I done? I've built up that trust. I proved to them that I would never do anything that would hurt them. I showed them that my power is here to protect them and not hurt them. And it's like, every day I use my power, that trust is being tested. Because trust, once broken, a wrist, an arm, or whatever will heal in time. Trust, it takes a hell of a lot longer. And I thought that was such a beautiful, poetic thing in so many regards, because it also shows you, like, even after all these years, it's like, everyone's waiting for me to, you know, everyone's waiting, because they're like, oh, like, in an instant, Superman could become the biggest threat on the planet. And I think that's such an interesting thing, that even this late in his career, he still has to think about that it's always going to be something. Obviously, it's interesting timing, because, like, obviously Jupiter's legacy kind of taps onto that too. Like, obviously they have their code, and they're kind of held to a higher standard, and this kind of fits in that same mode too. And I just thought that was so incredible, like, of an explanation about, like, the responsibility of it all. I just thought that was so good. And obviously it makes Jordan, I think it makes Jordan realize, right, me and my dad aren't too dissimilar. But also for Jordan, it's like he kind of hates this because he's always felt like an outsider because of his social anxiety disorder. And now on top of that, you add on the fact that I have these powers. Once again, he said he thought they would bring him closer to people. In fact, they've pushed people away. And that's a complicated thing about it. It will isolate you from people, like, because there will always be a part of yourself you can never fully tell anyone about. You know, luckily, Clark has Lois. Like, he has someone he can confide in and be all he is, you know? But it does kind of separate you from the rest of the people in your life. Like, that's an element every superhero is, you know, learning to deal with, like the ramifications of just what being a superhero is. We see it like Jeff's having those conversations with Jennifer. The issue, you know, I didn't think about, once again, all this parenting stuff, because we just had it with the Flash as well and Black Lightning. So it's just all this parenting stuff. Obviously, we tackled that on Arrow. What kind of that responsibility just as a hero. Obviously it's a little different in case of having powers, so like the Flash and Black Lightning elements slide a little bit better, but it's still that thing of like you as a parent, your relationship with your child, because of this thing that kind of connects you. I just thought it was so fascinating that it's like it can be an isolating thing, because for him, it's like, Sarah's like, you know, if there's anything you can talk to me. He's like, yeah, but I don't know why Tag said what he said. And so now he has to lie to, like, the only friend he has, you know, and it's just like, it, you know. And I think this is going to be interesting to see where, I think this might be a situation where going forward, Jordan might be super reluctant to ever use his abilities again, because it's like, right, he might kind of create, it might be like, not necessarily PTSD, but at the very least, it will strike him where, like, he'll be like, I don't want to do it. I don't want to hurt anyone again. So I'm curious. Will we see him potentially quitting the football team because maybe trying to punish himself for what happened? We do see at the end, like, that noise kicks in again and Jordan kind of passes out. Clark ends up x-raying him. It looks like there's something in his head. I don't know whether it's the blows from Tack. Like I said, I don't know whether it did something to him. It wasn't just, like, maybe it rattled his brain or something. From those blows from Tag, because he was like not only like super strong, but also like you add in like the speed and vibration of his power too. Like maybe that did something. Maybe Jordan's system is being overloaded because Clark is 100% Kryptonian. So maybe mixing it with human DNA, it's like becoming a little corrosive. That maybe it's too much for his human body to handle because he is half human. Because we've had this conversation recently in Invincible, which, you know, spoilers to a certain extent, if you haven't seen all of Invincible, because this is something in particular from the season finale. I always had my thoughts about what Viltrumite blood would mean for Mark. I was like, oh, he's half Viltrumite, he's half human. Their situation is a little different because of how pure and powerful Viltrumite blood is. I'll leave it at that. But if you've watched Invincible, or maybe they covered this in the comic book as well, so you might be more knowledgeable in that case. But I don't think this is that case. I think it's like maybe the Kryptonian side is it might be similar in that case, where like the Kryptonian side might be too strong for his human body to handle, and that's what, I mean, this is unknown territory for everybody. Like Clark he knew it was a possibility, but he doesn't know that, you know. So hope he's taking him to the fortress to get examined to find out what's going on. But like I said, I think Jonathan has abilities as well. I just don't think, like I said, that's what I think. Because I feel like if it was just like, oh, I stopped the punch and just, like I said, the sun boom could have just been like the reverberation of just it breaking all his arm. But the fact is he stopped the punch and like I feel like the punch would have just gone through and he would have still hit cut. The fact is he stopped, but I think it's because of everything going on. They didn't really, because it seems like there is a hint of something there with Jonathan. I think, you know, said it since the beginning, I think Jonathan is going to get abilities. He might just be a little bit of a late bloomer. We'll see how that all works. Because I also talked about it, I think them being twins and everything, that maybe like they complement each other. Like the way Jonathan's able to kind of calm Jordan down, like make him understand that, like, that maybe it's like they're stronger together rather than apart. Like not just on that level, but also when it comes to powers. Like maybe it's a situation where, once again, maybe both of them represent a full Kryptonian because they're half. like Jordan's half with Jonathan's half makes a full Kryptonian. Like that was kind of my thought since the beginning, but we'll ultimately have to wait and see where things kind of turn out on that front. Obviously, Lois is looking more and more into the Morgan Edge situation, trying to check out the mines as, like, obviously, Morgan kind of kicks that into high gear, and so he ends up promoting Lana instead of, Kyle, which obviously Kyle takes a hit, for his pride, because for him it's like he wanted to do something more. He thought because he thought that maybe Morgan had something for him, which even Lana's like, but you enjoy being a fireman so much. This type of promotion for me, it fits probably what I kind of do a little bit more than you. But even Sarah says it later on, because Sarah's kind of reluctant when it comes to her dad. It's like, Mom, you're willing to give him a chance. And she's like, your dad is at the very least trying, so we want to go on a date now. Because even she's like, yeah, Dad's not too celebratory about your promotion. She's like, were you listening? It's like, it's a small house. It's not that big of a house. You hear stuff, I mean, it wouldn't be the first time. That's always been a thing of, she's heard, the back and forth between her parents. But it's yeah, her dad drinks a lot, and he's but he is trying to be better. So I think she's willing to give him the benefit of the doubt to the point. It's like, all right, I'll look after Sophie while you guys have your date night, So, which even he later on is like, you know what? I'm sorry, Lana. I'm going to do that a lot. Sorry. Yeah, I'm a little disappointed, but the fact is, you are a better fit for the job. You have always been the brains of the family. You're the smartest one anyway, so it's like, Morgan can't be an idiot if he ended up choosing you for the job because you are the right person. So, like I said, I think he's taking steps. Obviously, Lois came to them earlier in the episode being like, yeah, Morgan's up to some stuff, but Kyle doesn't want to listen because it's like, once again, you don't know this town. You weren't here when this town has its struggles, and you haven't been here. It's like, my buddy called me up. He's happy about the work he's getting from Morgan because he's been 8 months without a job, and it's like he has a family to support Lois, and you're going to take that away from him. It's a thing of Lois knows Morgan's up to something terrible, and it's like he's just pretending like he's helping his town, just so he can ultimately end up doing some dastardous stuff. And every other town, he's kind of burned or screwed over to a certain extent. Is kind of what he's kind of indicating, what she's trying to indicate to Kyle, but Kyle's too caught up in. He's coming from a good place of he wants to do what's best for him and the town. It's like, I've got to be the one to look after this town. There's so many people whose livelihoods have been on the line. And even Lana being like, I get what you're trying to do, Lois, but the fact is, you've never seen this town when things get bone dry, when things kind of get really, really bad here. So we need this. So she's kind of sorry, but it's like, but at the very least, Lois is like, just be careful. She ends up getting help from Marcus, who ends up kind of dishing out, some, they're pretending to be inspectors. But also, it's like, wow, you have all this high-tech stuff. Even, I guess, part of his fake backstory is like, oh, he worked at Luthor Corp. It's like, well, he is, I guess he's Lex in his universe or his world, whatever time frame he's from, but, or time, world he's from, but, so it's, which is so interesting, because, he's not, because Lex has always seen Superman as a threat. Now, whether it's just because he has this inferiority complex, because it's like, oh, you have all these powers and I don't. It's a jealousy, plus, he sees Superman as a perceived threat that, even Sam to a certain extent had. It's just, this Lex comes from a world where he was right about Superman, so it's a thing where he's not necessarily a bad guy. He's just trying to save this world from the same tragedy that happened to his. The fact is he knows about X-Kryptonite must mean that went rampant in his world. So it might not just be Clark. There might be other super beings that have kind of taken over the world. Superman's at the top of it, but basically he might have a legion of superpowered people that ended up basically, the entire world didn't just have to fight Superman. They had to fight other people like him, like Tag, like a Derek, like a Jordan, or potentially a Jonathan, Maybe something along those veins of kind of motivating why he does what he does. Also, going above and beyond, working with Lois. It's well, for one, he knows she's like the top tier reporter in the world. But also, it's right, they're a item. They were an item in his world. We don't know if maybe he had to leave her behind to do this mission, or maybe because he says his world's destroyed. So it might be a thing of legitimately the planet's gone, or it's like the in humanity's been enslaved. Like we know Sam from his world is dead, but maybe Lois is as well, which so maybe that plays a role in all of that. I don't know. We'll ultimately have to wait and see where things kind of go on that front. But obviously Lois, she's like, something's not right about you. Like, oh, you have all this tech, about this X-kryptonite, and obviously now she knows Leslie has powers, and now Leslie knows that she has powers. So it was interesting though, like the moment she got zapped, like Lois walked by her, and there was almost like this red like shimmer across her, very similar to Jordan. Like maybe the X-kryptonite had, like when it gave Tag powers, like that yellow phosphorus, maybe it did something to Jordan too. But maybe this is also supposed to represent, because we saw like maybe it's supposed to represent what I thought, that having these powers are too much for just, they're 100% human getting these. Jordan's half human, so maybe all of that kind of correlates together. But obviously for Lois, she doesn't trust Marcus. It's like, for him, it's like, I'm trying to do the right thing in this particular case. It's like he's asking for her trust, but it's also the thing of like he knows Lois better than she realizes, because so it's a situation of, obviously for her, she's got a lot of questions and doesn't trust, because she even starting to think that Morgan Edge might have, at first she was saying that Morgan Edge might be the stranger that attacked Clark. It's like, yeah, he might be the one that knows who you are as Superman, knows your real name is Kal-El. Obviously, the answer's a little closer than she thinks. She's actually been working with him without realizing it. But I'm curious, how he knows what he doesn't know about Morgan. Maybe like there are a lot of similarities between this world and his world. Like Morgan might have done this in his world, and that's what set everything in motion as well. Maybe something of that nature on that level, but for Lois, she's definitely going to be keeping an eye out for Marcus, trying to figure out what he knows about Morgan and all of this, like his part to play and everything. So now they're more aware, because even Clark's like, wait, X-kryptonite. It's like, because that was also like a thing, like I've talked about this before, like once again, you never know what's different because of just Crisis and everything. But in this continuity of the Arrowverse, they've never really touched too much on like the different colors of kryptonite like they do in like Smallville. That was a big thing. Like the different colors have different effects on different people, but also even different effects on Kryptonians. So who knows what that would do to Clark? We know what green kryptonite does. It makes him weak, can potentially kill him. I know red can make him lose control, because that actually pops up in season 1 of, I believe that was season 1 of Supergirl. It might have been a later season. I want to say it was season 1. I don't think they've ever touched on that again in this continuity, but so that's something, I guess, because they don't want to, like, it's like that was a Smallville thing. We don't really want to dabble too much in that. Like, I would be pulling too much from Smallville, so maybe that's why they haven't really tackled it. But now they're kind of bringing it back. Like, who knows? Like, maybe we'll find this series will introduce other ones, like I believe it's black kryptonite that completely takes away his powers, which maybe that'll play a role too if that pops up, because it could be a thing of maybe Jordan might decide, like, I'd rather just be a normal kid, not have powers and all this. We'll ultimately have to wait and see. I'm just kind of throwing that out there for now. Really glad to have Superman and Lois back. I'm really interested to see where the rest of the season takes us, but in particular where the next episode ends up taking us. But really, that's all I want to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and good